harnessing innovative technologies to support resilient settlements on the coastal zones of the Caribbean, or Hit Reset Caribbean, was sponsored by the ACP EU program to strengthen research and innovation capacity in African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries. The project recognizes that the creation, development, and diffusion of indigenous and other forms of knowledge, technologies, and innovations are powerful drivers of inclusive and sustainable socio-economic development. This is particularly important in building resilience in coastal communities of the Caribbean, where the majority of the population and infrastructure resides, and which is threatened by sea level rise. Under Hit Reset Caribbean, Habitat for Humanity Trinidad and Tobago is stepping in with its Building Resilient Communities BRC initiative, a program designed to empower communities to strengthen their resilience in the face of these environmental pressures. Using the participatory approach for safe shelter awareness, or PASA tool, Habitat for Humanity worked with the communities of Black Rock, Brickfield, Fanny Village, Guayare, Lebre South, Lambeau, La Savane Lebre East, Louisdor, Ottawa, and Speyside, focusing on collaborative solutions and sustainable practices that can protect these most at-risk areas.
We're talking today about Habitat for Humanity Trinidad and Tobago. I want to start with Habitat for Humanity, a global mission on every continent of the world, where we are advocating that everyone has a decent place to live. That's our vision statement. Habitat for Humanity Trinidad and Tobago exemplifies and embodies the very mission of our Habitat for Humanity International parent body. And this particular project that I'm sharing about today is a project in collaboration with partners. That's how we work. In collaboration with the community and certainly with the families. The project is called Project BRC, Building Resilient Communities, but it comes under the Hit Reset Caribbean initiative. We were one of the grantees, and Hit Reset Caribbean stands for Harnessing Innovative Technologies to Support Resilient Settlements on the Coastal Zones of the Caribbean. It's an initiative of the Organization of African, Caribbean, Pacific States, with the financial funders being the European Union.
Habitat for Humanity Trinidad and Tobago uses an assessment tool called PASA, participatory approach to safe shelter awareness. This tool is used in communities to pick up the vulnerability of our communities. PASA has 8 modules. 1, historical profile. This is where we come in to find out where you were in history, to find out where you're going in the future. We love to talk to the seniors here. They have a wealth of information that we need to capture. Our second module is mapping. This is where we do a survey. We come out into the community and we go door to door and we get some socioeconomic data, some demographic data, and some data also on the project that we are doing. Then we have frequency and impacts of hazards. We ask the community here now, tell us, what hazards affect you? How frequent does this happen? And what we can do and you can do to mitigate against these hazards? Then we look at the safe and unsafe shelters. We usually look at the houses within the community. What is safe? What is unsafe? Sometimes we think our houses are all that safe until we start to really take a closer look and realize that, hey, we need Habitat for Humanity here. Then we look at options for solution. What can we do to help? What are your solutions? What are your plans? What do you think your community needs? Then we look at planning for change. How can we make this happen? You know, is it a long-term project? Is it a short-term project? You know, is funding available? What can we do? How can we make it happen? Then we look at the problem box. You know, you look at all your problems that you may have in your community, you can find the solution within. Then you look at the monitoring evaluation. Who is going to monitor these projects? Who is going to evaluate these projects? Who is going to be there to say, this is possible, this is not possible, okay? From this PASA assessment tool, we will then come back into your community and we will hold an evaluation meeting. This is for the community to say, look, this is correct and this is what we really want. Because remember, when we come into your community, not every resident in the community will be able to come out to PASA. So we work with the people that we have and we take the information from them. So when we're ready to roll this plan out, we will come back to you to make sure that we are doing the right thing and that the information given is correct.
Habitat for Humanity Trinidad and Tobago is committed to disaster risk reduction, response, and recovery, or DRR, which develops the community's capacity to reduce shelter-related risk by raising awareness of everyday vulnerabilities and everyday risks, and developing skills in joint analysis, learning, and decision-making related to the community's built environment. DRR focuses on concepts like what is a hazard, examples of hazards, hazard safety, what is vulnerability, what is a disaster, what are disaster risks, creating a family disaster plan, creating a family communication plan, and building an emergency kit. The participatory approach for safe shelter awareness, or PASA, has been Habitat's most powerful tool in disaster risk reduction, response, and recovery. And it has been foundational in this Hit Reset project. As such, the PASAs were carried out across the 10 communities and provided a unique way for residents to shape their own resilience plans, building skills and solutions tailored to each area's specific challenges. Now, let's meet some of the dedicated community members who've been working with Habitat to build the resilience of their communities. You've already seen some of the activities in Brickfield, Louisdor, and Guayare, so let's take a closer look at Ottawa, Fanny Village, Blackrock, and Speyside.
This is a presentation of the development of Ottawa, our lovely village, Ottawa. So we started from slavery because we have information from slavery. After the apprenticeship, the owner of the slave estate, which is St. Joseph Estate, gave the slave land and they came over the hill to form Ottawa. The first set of families in Ottawa, we believe, is the Mentors. That is the longest running family in Ottawa. Mentors married off and development and so on. During World War II, in the 1942, they were believed to have German U-boats off St. Joseph, as the owner of St. Joseph estate was an Italian, and the Italian helped the Germans come to bomb up the US boats, then ships that were outside of the Gulf. The Ghana Army Base in Anton just over. At the beach side, the Ghana Army Base, US Army Base, that was a rest stop for the black soldiers that went on to form the companies. In the 1980s, we had our first, that we know of, blowout of rose planting. That was Janet. We had a calypso with Janet. Can't remember the calypso? We didn't have a calypso with Janet because Janet did have the destruction in Haiti and came over to me. So Janet was the first storm that we know that hit Atwa. We had our village halls in the 1970s, and then the government came and assisted us to build the community center, now known the community center, in the 16th of July 2014. We also had another scare as Brett hit Antoine, and again it was blown off and thing, no major thing, but people lose their roof. About 3 or 4 people lose their roof. Schools in Antoine. We started with Sachin Shop. The Williams family, where they're located now, had a school there. We had preschool, where Miss Rose was a teacher in the 80s. Then Miss Lima was a teacher in this community center. Then we got our new ECC preschool, government run, in 2006 by the AdeKUS Church. And we have our AdeKUS primary school in 20th of April 1956.
My name is Dr. Sujin Kim, and
my name is Dr. Soflai from Hampton University Department of Architecture.
And we're with our architecture students, and it was really great to get involved in this Habitat for Humanity Trinidad and Tobago. This survey that was developed by Habitat for Humanity, and where we actually saw that long list of questions, we're like, oh, is it really gonna work? And like, it's a lot. And but as soon as we started asking the questions, we definitely understood why all of these questions are needed, and to understand what's needed in the community, and you know, what are the challenges in this community, things like that. So it was a really great opportunity.
The survey was definitely useful, and the actual questions definitely helped with learning about the buildings and what the issues were about their buildings.
As we all know, climate change is one of the most environmental challenges these days that all of the countries are facing with that. And one of the concentration of is on sea level rise. And when we came here and when we learned about the program that you have also here, it really inspired us to learn more about your program, and also open our students to your program and your research that you have in the Habitat here.
I think it's different going online and seeing statistics and stuff, and then actually going in person and doing the statistics. So yeah, it puts a person behind the numbers. So it's not just like you know, like this age group, 18 to, no, you see these people, you have to go and talk to them. So it's a different experience, and it kind of ups the importance of it because you're literally in it.
So they all had a chance to learn the technology that Habitat for Humanity is utilizing.
In addition to that, the way that you developed that survey to assess the resiliency of some of those vulnerable houses here in this area also is very interesting. And I'm sure that students learn a lot about your program and the way that you survey or document.
We definitely see this as a model approach that can be applied to many other communities, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but perhaps anywhere in the Caribbean.
Coastal erosion is one of our biggest problems, and therefore I would like to see some solution being executed. We have suggested that the construction of retaining walls, the construction of gabion baskets, the use perhaps of steel piling, as well as piling of logs may be appropriate, in addition, of course, to a reduction or an elimination of sand mining. Now, we are hoping that those proposed solutions would limit the rate at which the coastal areas of the community and the pace at which those areas are eroded.
It stands now, we would have been partially prepared, because when it comes to drainage in particular, you need better drains to allow the easy access to the water flow. And I know that there are some houses that need some repairs where the roofs are concerned. But praise God, we were spared the hurricane. Well, although I would have been living in Black Rock for 60 years, it taught me a lot that I didn't know. I'm sure that it will benefit the villagers in the future, as long as this is posted where everybody could get to see it.
When you start interfering with the land, when the rain starts to fall, that will help to cause somebody flooding and whatever. So people come in with ideas that we could put to strengthen in case of a hurricane, what we could do to help. We may not be perfect in it. For instance, securing our homes, trying to get proper drainage, which is one of the biggest problems.
So far, it's been eye-opening experience. For me, it's good to see people in Speyside coming out, working together, like the village council and the environment group working together in the community, talking to people house to house about situation where they live in, how they feel about the environment and whatnot.
I am Christine Scipio, a resident of Speyside, and I got introduced to the meeting by Suzanne, and to me so far it has been very interesting. The initiative to at least help the village and villagers in preparing for major disasters is a good one, especially in our hurricane season time.
Let me say thanks to all the persons from Speyside and environs who have saw it fit to come out week after week to make this session a success.
During class, we were asked to identify 3 shelters within Speyside that can be used as possible shelters for emergencies. The first one we identified was the Speyside High School, also the Speyside Community Center, and the Speyside Anglican School. One aspect of this class that I am most excited and looking forward to is the GIS training that is upcoming. I believe that this is essential as it will help persons better understand their community and how to plan better for any upcoming disasters and hazards and be better prepared for these disasters.
What I enjoyed most was the preparation of the maps and having to do like a history of Speyside. That was very interesting for me because you got to see how it was before 2024 and the history, the vibrant history that is behind all of this.
So what exactly is Hit Reset? Hit Reset is really focusing on our coastal communities. What are the vulnerabilities and how do we look at those vulnerabilities in relation to addressing the vulnerabilities in those communities and building resiliency? What Habitat for Humanity did, we decided we're going to embark on a collaboration with GIS STT and a couple of other partners Then what we did is created methodologies and implement them in 10 coastal communities of Trinidad and Tobago. We chose 6 in Trinidad and 4 in Tobago. After we looked at what the data was creating, we then used all of the information, collated it into one large digital dashboard and set 10 subsidiary dashboards, which showed the vulnerability index of each community and the vulnerability index of each family. It was a powerful project. It means that you can look on our dashboard map and drill down by a touch of a button if you have a smart screen TV and see and touch the community on the map and drill right down to each house and find out this is neighbor Joan with a resiliency index of 2 or 5 or 10. And those resiliency index now tells us, listen, you are most vulnerable. For example, in practical layman terms, there was somebody living with a disability. They're up on an incline and there is no access road. Imagine a disaster occurs, a tsunami, God forbid, and we're trying to reach that person with an ambulance and no access road. So it's that kind of detailed data we were able to extrapolate and put that now into relevant information that is suited for national stakeholders like ODPM, the regional corporation, and a number of other entities that can say, listen, this is how we will treat with vulnerabilities with people living with disability. This is how we plan for them should a disaster occur. It doesn't have to be a national disaster. It could be a fire. It could be some other hazard. We know how to plan for those persons in the communities. Then what we created out of the passes were action plans in each of the communities at the grassroots level. That's the beauty of this project. Each community gets to say, what are my vulnerabilities, but also what do I need to do to fix those vulnerabilities? For example, we have no drains, so the water runoff takes a long time. It is washing away land, soil, so we need drains, we need retaining walls, we need our houses fixed. So the community decided what the action plan is going to be in short, medium, and long term. Short, medium, and long term, it's just a matter of time. Short term, 6 months to address the resiliency matter. Over 6 months to about a year would be a medium term, and then over that would be a long-term initiative that needs to be done to fix any vulnerability that the community has identified. So coming out of that, Habitat was able to meet with a number of other stakeholders at the national level, at national governmental level, private partnership level, and at the community level to say, listen, this is what the community has indicated that they would like to be fixed so that the resiliency scores can go up. How can you get on board? What are you going to bring to the table to address those vulnerabilities? So the whole project was about creating this whole data gathering exercise in a very innovative way, and then putting it into the dashboard, and then now saying to our stakeholders, let's get on board. As our Prime Minister will always say, people-private partnerships to collaborate and address those vulnerabilities and the exposure to high risk. What we have found throughout the project is that there were a lot of lessons learned. I had absolutely no idea the kind of reception people will have had to the data that was being collected. First of all, the data was put into charts that shows all kinds of information that was ready for decision makers, policyholders, rich data. It means we had, coming out of that, how much females and how much males in a particular community, how much people that are most vulnerable, how many persons are marginalized, how many persons need housing repairs, how many persons need access to roads, how many persons didn't have drains, and there was so much of rich information. Why is that so important for us, apart from decision making? we need to understand where we stand as a national environment as it relates to data. The last updated census is 2011. Can you imagine how irrelevant that information is? And can you imagine now that I could tell you in each of the 10 communities where we have mapped real life data? Man, that is going to change the course of how we view resiliency in those communities and how we're going to address those issues. So have we harnessed the innovative technology for the purpose of building resiliency? Thumbs up, Habitat, you did. But we did it in collaboration with the community. The other rich and beautiful thing that came out of the project is that the community were able to tell the historical profile. I have learned what have happened in 1826 in some communities, in 17 this in this other community. I've learned, for example, in Louisville, that coming out of World War, government gave these retired soldiers land, and that's how land was distributed. And each person got 5 acres where they were supposed to turn it now into agricultural facility for themselves and their families, and then build houses. And then over time, of course, generation after generation would have done different things with the land. Louis Dore's history spoke about they have the most endangered species of birds, things that I never knew before. So each of the community had the richness of the history that would have been lost over time because it's not captured and documented. Here we go, our PASA reports will now showcase that for our communities. So coming out of the PASA, coming out of the Hit Reset project, Building Resilient Community BRC, we are able now to rewrite the history, put it there for posterity, put it out there for our children's children to see about Ottawa and Guayari and Farney Village and Speyside and all the communities that we were able to capture in Hit Reset. We also were able to train over 600 families with disaster risk reduction training. We were able to, like I said, create the wonderful digital dashboard that can tell all kinds of stories now. We were able to have conversations with local government, central government, all the stakeholders that will be involved going forward, and they're not going to escape because Habitat is hard to resist, extremely hard to resist. So I think everyone watching me understands you need to contact us on how you need to get on board so we can build the resiliency of our coastal communities and make our communities stronger than they have been before.
First phase of this project would have been to identify these 10 specific communities that we had to focus on. Trinidad and Tobago is an island, so obviously we have a lot of communities along the coast. So we had to develop what we call the CVI. That was using a GIS model that was created by some of the members of the society and using data from various organizations that we had to get. So we were grateful for that as well. And that was used to identify these 10 communities. So just to touch on that, we would have actually used physical indicators, socioeconomic indicators, as well as some coastal forcing indicators. So to be specific, we had to get population density, building density, distance from roads, land use, points of interest. Now, just to touch a bit on the data to develop the CVI, as you all know, we have some challenges in Trinidad and Tobago with recency of data, up-to-date data sets. So, for example, like demographic data from 2011, you have building footprint data from 2014, road network data from 2014. So it was quite challenging to get up-to-date data. So we had to use what was available and what was readily available to us for this project, given the timelines as well. So we got a lot of data from UE, as well as from IMA. So they would have provided us with sea level rise data, geomorphology data, as well as coastal erosion data, and then elevation data from both UE and IMA. So all of this was put into our GIS model, which was basically then used to create the CVI, which identified ranked all of the coastal communities from 1 to 5. And then we would have gone in there and chosen the 10 most vulnerable to focus on for this project. So this is just a snapshot. We actually have an interactive web map that is part of the dashboard. So this is what the results of the CVI would look like. It's color-coded based on from yellow to red, so based on the severity of the vulnerability, and similarly for Tobago. So as you saw in the video, we identified the 10 coastal communities from Guaya straight down to Black Rock, so I won't run through that. And now we looked at it from a perspective of a coastal community. We initially was planning to do a 5 km from the coast, but 5 km that's madness. So we looked at something called the T1 zone. So now this T1 zone is anything that is below 5 meters high from sea level. So we would have then overlaid the T1 zone on top of that 5 kilometer buffer of the coastal vulnerability. And I know I'm getting a little bit technical, so just bear with me, just to explain that how we got this. And that would have basically narrowed down each of the individual communities, so we have a smaller, more impactful project. Because basically we're now looking at 5 km from the coast, but specifically the areas that are lower than 5 meters. So those would be, if there's any, like for example, storm surges and so forth, those will be impacted first. So we want to focus on those residences. So another snapshot, so you would see the little shaded blue. That is basically the T1 zone that is overlaid on top of the CVI. So all of this is on an interactive dashboard. We'll go into a bit more detail later on. Now, once that was done, that was the first phase, we had to go into the GIS mapping. So we've been hearing a lot about these 62 questions and how long it has been. So we would have had to have some consultation with Habitat and some various subject matter experts, and we would develop 62 questions that would have been asked to each of the persons that we surveyed. This was done using ArcGIS Survey 123. So basically, we would have created these surveys, and they would have been on tablets. We would have gone into each individual house and surveyed the individuals. It was very tedious, but we're very grateful because the data was essential, and there was garbage in, garbage out. So it took some time in the mapping process, but all in all, a success. So in addition to having this survey, another major advantage was the drone mapping aspect of it. Now I'll explain. If you open your phone and you open Google Maps, you see little dots of your current location. So if you move, every 5 minutes, you see the dot is moving. So depending on where you stand, if you're in a city or if you're, under a building, that dot moves. So your accuracy of that data is a little bit off. So we decided to use our high resolution drone imagery to digitize each of the building footprints. So just think about that from the level of detail that we're going to have with this mapping. Each building footprint, and this is very recent data, this is not from Google Maps, this is literally from a week before when we have done the survey. And we have digitized each of those building footprints, uploaded it to the survey. So when the surveyor goes out on the field, you actually select the building that you're in front of. So you know exactly which feature you're mapping. So you're assigning these attributes immediately to that building. So it's no more guessing to say, okay, well, the address is wrong or the GPS location is off. It's very, very precise mapping. So I just wanted to give that. I think that's very innovative. This project was about innovation. That was actually the first time that has been done, I think, in this country. So kudos to the team for that. It was very tedious, but very successful. So once that was done, we then moved on to the RI side of things. So all of this data, when we identified the community from the CVI, we started doing mapping. Then that up-to-date data, because the CVI has been built from data from 2011 going forward, the RI now is using the most recent data. So this is data that's being collected on the field by the surveyors. So we would have created another model that would have used this up-to-date data to calculate an individual score per building footprint. So we have each specific building that was surveyed, they have a score, and then that is now collated to the community level. So you have an average of the community, but you can also drill down to the building. So just to touch quickly on the technical aspect, we actually developed a paper, a white paper for this, so that could be distributed for the technical aspects. But just to touch on it briefly, it was basically curating and categorizing the 62 questions and ranking them based on importance and relevance to resilience, and then developing a matrix that would have been used to create the CVI. I'm sorry, the RI. Not to go too much into it because I really want to show you guys the dashboard. So once that was done, we then created or uploaded all of the information onto the dashboard. This is a snapshot of it. Just to go through very quickly, you would see the average RI, that is the average RI of each individual community. Now, just to mention that each community has its own individual dashboard, so that could be shared to basically the various stakeholders who are interested in that particular community. And each of the questions are gathered into different tabs, so it's very easy to manipulate and to maneuver. You can select each building to give you the attribute data for it, and you can also look at the statistics and select information based on the stats that are being shown. So this is the dashboard for the Brickfield community. So it's 2 pages, so just bear with me. So on the first page is basically your overview. So you see we have a bunch of figures. Each of it has a specific meaning. So we would have, as I said before, identified the specific areas based on the CVI and the T1 zone. Now, it's a little bit dark on the screen, but basically, this shows you exactly where we'd have focused on. Now, where we flew the drone as well, so we would have identified 711 buildings, and we would have completed surveys for 480 of those. And each of the figures there, you would see, for example, you had 34 were labeled as abandoned, 14 businesses, 247 actual residences. So all of that data is available, all of the data is there, it's logged, it's recorded. And each of those attributes for that data is available on the dashboard. We also had some cases where the communities where they were not necessarily in the T1 zone, so they were probably like between 6 to say 10 or 15 meters. So we still focus on those areas. So, but because we want to make sure that the resource allocation is, correct, we looked at splitting between the T1 and the T2 zones. So it's really a very it's a method for just making the decisions. It's a decision-based making system. Right. So this now is actually the results of each survey. So as I mentioned before, you have various tabs. So you have general household information, health and disability challenges, site information, so forth. Now, each of this gives you a different set of statistics that you can look at. So for example, if you go to health and disability, you see the results of the survey. All the persons who would have labeled or who would have answered as having a disability or not having a disability. If you select, it highlights all of these households that would have said no. So if you want to do a program to help disabled persons, you literally just select the statistic that you want and you know exactly who you need to focus on, who needs to have that resource or that assistance. And as you zoom in, based on the drone imagery, you actually have really, really high resolution imagery. So I like to show off for the images. It's amazing. And then if you click on each of the features, you actually get the general information. So some of the information is sensitive, so we have to redact it and whatnot, but you have the general statistics for each individual data set that is there. So just think about how valuable this information could be and how you can use this for basically anything, not just natural disaster management, basically anything, health. I chose Brickfield in particular because what I found was very interesting was this part of the community. It's just right next to the river. And if you zoom in, I was amazed because when I went there, it was like, you stepped to your car, it's like mosquitoes, spikes. Like, what's causing those mosquitoes? It's tires. Like literally hundreds and hundreds of tires just there. Yeah. So this is really, and with this imagery, you don't even questions that were not asked. So if you're looking at, for example, persons who have like tanks for like extra water and so forth, you can actually see a lot of detail. You can actually make out, for example, like boundaries, property boundaries and so forth. So it's a lot of information you could get from the images as well. And one of the great things about this is that you can do simple queries. So for example, if you select disabilities, so all the persons with disabilities, and then you want to know, okay, what is if they have an emergency plan, you can select from that data set the persons who don't have an emergency plan. So it's basically your query, you're creating your queries within your data. So it's really amazing. You can do what you want to do.
the development of each community's historical profile, community mapping, assessment of hazards, evaluation of safe and unsafe shelter, creation of options for solutions, planning for change, problem box and SWOT analysis, monitoring and evaluation, and action plan shared one crucial element: collaboration. Each step was guided by and developed alongside community members, with Habitat for Humanity providing expert support. This collaborative approach ensured that the process was more than just consultation. It was about fostering true community ownership. Habitat was dedicated to empowering these communities by equipping them with actionable plans that resonated with their unique experiences and needs, creating a legacy that felt deeply connected to and committed to sustaining. Now, let's hear from a few more voices, this time from La Savane, La Brea East, La Brea South, and Lambo, and learn how they contributed to building resilience in their communities.
I'm Lana Stewart, and I'm here with other members of the Lambo community. We just completed PASA training where we are informing persons within the community right now about disaster preparedness and things that they can do in order to prepare themselves for any disaster that may come up.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask was, what is the potential for training on a local level using this information after it has been gathered?
In the sphere of donor relations, proposals, and requesting funding, forget the government for now. If you go out to the multinational donors and you write a proposal and you request funding to do particular developmental projects within your community, what they're looking for is solid data that backs up the proposal that you're writing.
Disaster management training, I believe, will help. It will always help. It helps prepare people for situations that may come. It will prepare people to train them in not only to help themselves, but to help their neighbors, to help their friends, help other people of the community.
The disaster management authorities should carry on more programs in the community where disaster is concerned. Because if a disaster takes place in, let me say, La Savane here, a lot of people in the community of La Savane might know what to do.
So yes, they will be in a place of knowledge where they are able to assist others in situation and assist themselves. It will help them to know.
It will give us a chance to know beforehand what is happening and put things in place a long time before.
I don't think this community is prepared fully. We need a continual training and redress of the issue of preparedness for our community.
Pitch Lake is here, and just behind us is the sea. So in order to determine if a community is vulnerable or its level of vulnerability, we need to do an assessment. We need to work with the community members to determine where they are, what's their status, and only then can we determine the actions, the projects, the activities needed to bring that community up to a certain level, an acceptable level of vulnerability or resiliency.
In this new dispensation where Habitat is expanding its focus, our international offices have moved into what is called a theory of change process. And for each of our local affiliates, we're beginning to look at what are our stressors, what are the things that are impacting our ability to really build decent and affordable houses. And as we look at those stressors, there are issues like land, accessibility to land. There are issues of houses not being built properly our contractors not understanding the need to build safe, sound quality houses for low-income families. And so Habitat has taken on this initiative to make sure we are doing roof mitigation projects, roof retrofitting projects. We are looking at houses where there are no ring beams. So we're actually going to revise the construction program we have started, and we are now saying to families, if we're going to put on your roofs, you gotta allow us now to put on ring beams. There are certain cases where we have to now do stiffeners, take off the whole roof and put what you would call columns on the corners of the houses. We have to go in and put it hurricane straps. We also harvesting the water differently. So there are rainwater harvester systems that are created under what we call the WASH program, water, sanitation, and hygiene. So those are some of our contributions. You might want to ask, what is WASH going to do and how does it relate to climate change? Well, imagine what we're doing is repurposing the water. So instead of it falling on the ground and wasting, it's now going into water tanks and stored there for when you want to use it. And now you will reduce the amount of water that gets on the land in one go. The flow will be at a reduced rate, and so that will help with flooding. Just imagine a Port of Spain for me with everybody with a rainwater harvester tank. That's millions of gallons of water repurposed and stored in tanks. And so when the rain falls, you're not going to flood. Imagine Port of Spain without a flood. One simple solution, give everybody a rainwater harvester tank. So that's what Habitat is trying to do. Address national issues with incremental projects that would address climate change, that would address repurposing different things like water, like I just mentioned, fixing people's roofs. So that means that if your roof is fixed, when a high wind comes, National Self-Help wouldn't have 300 calls saying the roof blows off because the houses were fixed. How do we prevent disasters and hazards from happening to us? Habitat is trying to provide that information out to the public, and even coming in and doing repairs, coming in and disseminating information. So we're creating a lot of knowledge transfer opportunities for our communities and our families and our builders to understand, so that we wouldn't have an impact the way we've been having in the past.